There are places in this world where ancient laws still reign supreme, where breaking a single rule can cost you everything. This is Akpara, a town where rain falls like blessings from the heavens, where children dance in downpours and farmers work under thunderstorms without complaint. But there's one rule, one absolute law that has stood for 200 years. Never, ever open an umbrella. They say the last person who broke this rule brought a curse so terrible, the sky itself wept blood. The rivers dried up. Children cried for water that wouldn't come, and the earth cracked open like a broken promise. But why? Why would something as simple as an umbrella carry such devastating power? What happened in Akpara's past that made an entire town fear a piece of cloth and metal for 2 centuries? This is not just a tale. This is a warning. And by the end of this story, you'll understand why some traditions should never be broken. Before we dive deeper, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. We'd love to hear from you. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you never miss any of our upcoming videos. Our story begins on a humid afternoon in June, when Chidi returned home after 10 long years in the city. Chidi had left Akpara as a barefoot boy with nothing but dreams sewn into his pockets. He returned as a man with everything: money, success, and confidence that bordered on arrogance. The town barely recognized him. His clothes were foreign, his accent had changed, even the way he walked spoke of a man who'd forgotten the soil that raised him. But it wasn't his expensive shoes that made the elders freeze in their tracks. It wasn't his designer sunglasses or his leather bag. It was what he carried in his left hand. Whispers spread through the market like wildfire. Mothers pulled their children close. Old men shook their heads in disbelief. Young people exchanged confused glances. Chidi noticed the stares but dismissed them. After all, he was educated now. Modern, sophisticated, he'd seen the world beyond Akpara's borders. What could these villagers possibly know that he didn't? He reached his grandmother's home and called out with joy in his voice. Mama Neka emerged from inside, her face lighting up like the morning sun at the sight of her grandson. But that joy lasted only a heartbeat. Her eyes locked onto the umbrella, and the light in her face died instantly, replaced by something Chidi had never seen before: terror. Her lips moved, but at first no sound came out. Then, in a voice that shook the very air, she whispered the words that would change everything. Drop it now, child, before it's too late!" Within the hour, Chidi's entire family had assembled. The umbrella lay on the ground between them like a sleeping serpent. No one would touch it. No one would go near it. Chidi stood there, confusion mixing with irritation. He'd traveled hundreds of miles to see his family, and they were treating him like he'd brought home a bomb. "Can someone please explain?" he said, trying to keep his voice calm. "What's going on? It's just an umbrella, a tool to keep dry. What's the problem?" Mama Neka fixed him with a gaze that could cut through steel. When she spoke, her voice carried the weight of 2 centuries. "Just an umbrella, child? That just an umbrella nearly destroyed this town. It killed our crops. It dried our rivers. It made our children's bellies swell with hunger. And it took the life of the bravest woman who ever walked this earth." Chidi's irritation began to crack. He'd heard whispers of this legend as a child, fragments of stories told around evening fires, but like most young people who leave their villages for the city, he'd dismiss them as superstition. Old wives' tales meant to keep children obedient. "Mama," he said softly, "those are just stories, legends. You don't actually believe." "Believe?" Emeka, his father, cut him off. "Son, in the city you may have forgotten who you are, but here we remember. We remember because we have to. The rain you see falling outside, it falls because of a promise
a covenant sealed in blood and sacrifice. Amara moved closer, her young voice eager. "Tell him the full story, Mama. Tell him about Adaeze. He needs to understand." Mama Nneka closed her eyes, and when she opened them again, they seemed to look past Chidi, past the walls of the house, into a time long ago. "Very well, but once I begin, you must listen to every word, because this story, it's written in our blood, and if you don't understand it, history will repeat itself." It happened 200 years ago, in the time of our ancestors, when Akpara was ruled by Chief Ikenga the Wise. 2 centuries ago, Akpara was the jewel of the region. The rains came regularly, blessing the land with abundance. Yam harvests were so plentiful that families couldn't store them all. The river ran clear and strong, teeming with fish. The people were prosperous, yes, but more than that, they were grateful. Every planting season they would gather to thank the Sky Mother, Allah, for her blessings. Every harvest they would offer prayers to the heavens. They understood something that modern people often forget. Rain was not an inconvenience. It was life itself. Chief Ikenga ruled with wisdom passed down through generations. He was old, gray-haired, with eyes that had seen many seasons. And he had a daughter, Adaeze. They say when Adaeze walked, flowers turned toward her like she was the sun. But her beauty was nothing compared to her spirit. The people loved her, and she loved them in return. Among those who loved her was Obi, the finest warrior in all of Akpara, tall as an Iroko tree, strong as a leopard, and loyal as the earth itself. He had loved Adaeze since they were children, and she loved him too. Their marriage was to take place at the end of the farming season, and the entire town prepared for celebrations that would last 7 days. But fate, as it often does, had other plans. 3 months before the wedding, on a day when the sun burned hot and merciless, a stranger appeared at the gates of Akpara. He called himself Ekwensu, and he was unlike anyone the people had ever seen. His skin was painted with white chalk in patterns that hurt the eyes to look at. His voice was smooth as palm wine, but cold as a serpent's belly. He claimed to be a trader from lands beyond the great river, where the sun set into the ocean and spirits walked among men. Chief Ikenga, following the sacred law of hospitality, welcomed the stranger. He was given food, water, and shelter. And in return, Ekwensu offered gifts, beads that shimmered like captured starlight, cloth woven so fine it felt like morning mist, strange instruments that made music without being touched. But his final gift was the most peculiar of all. "Great chief," Ekwensu said, his voice like honey dripping from a poisoned comb, "I have saved the greatest treasure for last, a gift from the rain spirits themselves." He unwrapped the bundle with deliberate slowness and revealed an object that made the crowd gasp in wonder. It was circular, made of the finest cloth stretched over thin bones of metal. Colors swirled across its surface like a captured rainbow. And at its center was a mechanism that, when triggered, made the whole thing bloom open like a flower. "This," Ekwensu announced, "is called an umbrella. In my land, only the greatest chiefs and kings are permitted to carry such a thing. It is a symbol of power, a declaration that you are above the common rain that falls on ordinary people." The elders whispered among themselves. Some were suspicious. Why would the rain spirits create something to block their blessings? But others were intrigued. It was beautiful, exotic, a symbol of status. Chief Ikenga examined it carefully, turning it in his weathered hands. His daughter, Adaeze, stood beside him, and something in her spirit whispered a warning. But she was young, and who was she to question her father's judgment? "This is a generous gift," Chief Ikenga said, But I must ask, what do you want in return?" Ikwensu's smile grew wider. "Nothing, great chief, nothing at all. Simply use it. Show your people that their leader stands above even the heavens themselves." Those words should have been warning enough, but pride is a subtle poison, and it was already working its way into the chief's heart.
1 week later, Chief Ikenga announced a great ceremony. The planting season was about to begin, and he would bless the fields in a way never done before. Adaeze begged her father to reconsider. "Father," she pleaded, "there's something wrong about that thing. I can feel it in my bones." But Chief Ikenga would not listen. He was not a bad man, understand this. He was a good chief who had ruled wisely for decades. But in this moment, pride had clouded his judgment. "Daughter," he said gently, "you worry too much. This is merely a tool. The rain spirits have nothing to fear from a piece of cloth." The day arrived. The entire town gathered in the central square. Drummers played, dancers swayed, the air itself seemed to pulse with anticipation. Chief Ikenga stood on the ceremonial platform dressed in his finest royal cloth. And in his right hand he held the umbrella, still closed. As was tradition, he called upon the Sky Mother to bless the coming season. He raised his hands to the heavens. He spoke the ancient prayers. And then, slowly, deliberately, he opened the umbrella. For a moment, nothing happened. The crowd gasped in admiration at how beautiful it looked, colors catching the sunlight. But then, the drums stopped. Not because the drummers stopped playing, but because the sound simply died, as if the air itself had been sucked away. The sky, which had been bright blue with scattered clouds, began to change, first to gray, then to a sickly green, then to deep blood red. People pointed upward, their faces twisted in horror. The clouds weren't just dark, they were churning, twisting, forming shapes that looked almost alive. And then the rain stopped. Not gradually, not naturally. One moment it was drizzling, and the next the rain simply ceased. Droplets that were falling froze in midair for a heartbeat, then evaporated like morning mist under a cruel sun. Chief Ikenga stared at the umbrella in his hands, and for the first time in his long life, true fear gripped his heart. From somewhere in the crowd came laughter, cold, mocking laughter. Ikwensu stood there, his form beginning to shimmer and fade. "You have been tested," his voice echoed, seeming to come from everywhere and nowhere. "You have failed. You sought to stand above the blessings of heaven. Now see what it means to truly be abandoned by the sky." And with those words, he vanished completely, like smoke in wind. Days passed without rain, then weeks, then months. The crops that had been planted began to wither. The earth, once rich and dark, cracked open under the relentless sun. The river that had flowed for thousands of years began to shrink, revealing rocks that had never seen daylight. Children cried for water that couldn't be found. The elderly grew weak. Cattle died in the fields, their bones picked clean by vultures that circled endlessly in that blood-red sky. Chief Ikenga tried everything. He performed every ritual known to his people. He made offerings at every sacred grove. He called upon priests from neighboring towns. Nothing worked. The sky remained red. The rain remained imprisoned. And the umbrella? Chief Ikenga had thrown it into a fire the moment he understood what he'd done, but it wouldn't burn. He tried to break it. It wouldn't break. He tried to bury it. The earth itself rejected it, pushing it back to the surface. Finally, in desperation, they consulted the oracle, the oldest priestess in all the land, a woman so ancient she claimed to have spoken with Allah herself in her youth. She went into a trance that lasted 3 days. When she finally spoke, Her words fell like stones into water. The Sky Mother is not angry. She is heartbroken. You declared yourselves above her blessings. You rejected the rain she sent as love, treating it as something to be avoided, blocked, hidden from. Only one thing can restore the covenant. A willing heart must walk into the storm without protection, accepting every drop as a blessing, not a burden. They must go to the sacred grove and destroy the umbrella where it was meant to be destroyed, in the heart of the Sky Mother's domain. But understand this: whoever goes may not return. The Sky Mother's forgiveness requires sacrifice. Someone must pay the price for pride. Town gathered to decide who would make the sacrifice. Warriors volunteered, claiming their strength would see them through. Elders offered themselves, saying their lives were nearly complete anyway. Young men stepped forward to prove their bravery. But in the end, it was Adaeze who walked to the center of the circle. "I will go," she said simply. Her voice was calm, but it carried to every corner of the gathering. The crowd erupted in protest. Chief Ikenga fell to his knees before his daughter. "No," he wept, this proud chief reduced to tears. "Not you, anyone but you. This is my mistake. Let me go." But Adaeze knelt beside her father and took his weathered hands in her own. "Father, you opened the umbrella, yes, but you did so for all of us, to show our town's greatness. Your only crime was loving your people too much. That is no crime at all." She stood and looked across the faces of everyone she'd ever loved. Her mother weeping silently, her friends shaking their heads, the children she'd taught not understanding why her teacher had to leave. And then her eyes found Obi. The warrior stood like a statue, his face carved from stone, but his eyes betrayed him. They were oceans of grief. "Don't do this," he said, his voice breaking. "Adaeze, please, we're supposed to get married in 3 months. We're supposed to grow old together. We're supposed to—" She walked to him and placed her hand on his cheek. "We will grow old together, my love, just not in this lifetime, but in the next and every lifetime after. I will find you again." "Then I'm coming with you," Obi declared, reaching for his spear. "If you go into that storm, I go too." "No," her voice was gentle but absolute. "The oracle said a willing heart, not willing hearts. If you come, it will mean nothing. And besides," she smiled, and it was like the sun breaking through clouds, "someone needs to remember. Someone needs to tell our story so that others never forget what happened here. Promise me, Obi. Promise me you'll live. Promise me you'll make sure they remember." Obi's jaw clenched. Every instinct screamed at him to refuse, but he saw the determination in her eyes, the peace she'd found in this terrible decision, and he knew that to deny her this would mean to deny her the choice that might save everyone they loved. "I promise," he whispered. "I promise."
3 days later, at dawn, Adaeze prepared for her journey. The women of the town washed her with sacred water. They dressed her in white cloth, the color of purity and sacrifice. They painted her face with patterns that told the story of their people. They sang songs their grandmothers had sung. They blessed her with every prayer they knew. And then, carrying nothing but the cursed umbrella, Adaeze began to walk. The sacred grove was a day's journey into the forest. In normal times, it was a place of peace where priests went to commune with the ancestors. But now, with the curse active, it had become something else. As Adaeze walked, the forest itself seemed to watch her. Birds fell silent, animals fled. Even the insects stopped their endless drone. The sky above remained that terrible blood red, swirling with clouds that seemed almost alive. Behind her, hidden in the trees,
Obi followed. He'd broken his promise. He couldn't help it. He wouldn't interfere, but he had to see. He had to know what happened to the woman he loved more than his own life. By noon, Adaeze reached the outer edge of the sacred grove. The air grew thick, heavy, pressing down like a physical weight. Each breath became harder, each step required more strength. But she didn't stop. She didn't hesitate. As the sun began its descent toward the horizon, she reached the heart of the grove, a clearing where a single massive tree stood, its branches reaching toward the crimson sky like pleading hands. This was the Tree of Promises, where the first people of Akpara had made their covenant with Allah. Adaeze stood before it and raised the umbrella toward the sky. Her voice, clear and strong, rang out in the oppressive silence. Sky Mother, Allah, I stand before you not as a princess, not as Chief Ikanga's daughter, but as a child who has forgotten her mother's love. We were wrong. We tried to shield ourselves from your blessings, treating your rain as something to be avoided. We took your gifts for granted. We forgot that every drop that falls is born of your love for us. Thunder rumbled, the first sound from the sky in 3 months. I offer myself as payment for our pride. Let the rain return, let my people live, and let them remember forever what it means to reject the gifts of heaven. She opened the umbrella one final time. The cursed thing seemed to pulse with dark energy, as if fighting against what was about to happen. And then, with all her strength, she raised it high and brought it down against the tree. The umbrella shattered, not into pieces, but into dust, into nothingness, into a cloud of darkness that dispersed on a wind that suddenly roared to life. And the sky opened. Lightning struck the Tree of Promises, not to destroy it, but to illuminate it. The blood-red sky cracked like an eggshell, pieces of crimson falling away to reveal gray storm clouds beneath. And then she appeared, Allah, the Sky Mother. Not as the elders described her, but as she truly was. Neither young nor old, neither cruel nor kind, but something beyond human understanding. She was the storm itself, the rain given form, the sky wearing the shape of woman. Her eyes, ancient as time, looked down at Adaeze. When she spoke, it was with the voice of thunder, the whisper of rain, the sigh of wind. Daughter of earth, why do you stand before me? I come to pay for my people's pride. I come to ask that they may live. Allah circled her, and where she walked, grass sprang up green despite months of drought. And do you reject my rain? Do you find it a burden to bear? No, Adaeze's voice rang with truth. Your rain is life itself. Every drop is a blessing we don't deserve, but receive anyway. I would stand in your storms every day of my life and be grateful for each moment. Then tell me, child, why do your people try to shield themselves from blessings? Why do they create tools to reject what I freely give? She thought carefully before answering. This was the moment that mattered, not just for her, but for everyone. Because we forgot, she said simply. We forgot that discomfort can be a gift, that rain on your skin is life touching you directly, that getting wet in a storm is a reminder that you're alive. We started seeing your blessings as inconveniences. We forgot to be grateful. A single tear fell from Allah's eye. It fell through the air like a diamond, and where it touched the ground, a spring burst forth, clear water flowing after months of drought. You understand, she said softly. You truly understand. Very few do. She reached out and touched Adaeze's forehead, and the young woman gasped as visions flooded her mind. She saw the world as Allah saw it, every raindrop an act of love, every storm a gift of renewal, every drought a test of faith. I am not angry at your people, she said. I am sad, because when they reject the rain, they reject me,
and I love them so much. Then let me carry that message. Let me return and teach them. Let me help them remember."
Allah smiled, but it was tinged with sadness. "Brave daughter, you offer yourself for your people. That sacrifice has been accepted. But understand, some lessons can only be learned through loss. Your people will remember, not because of what you taught them in life, but because of what your sacrifice cost them." Lightning flashed, and rain began to fall. Softly at first, then harder, then in sheets. Adaeze stood in it, feeling rain on her skin for the first time in 3 months. It was cold, it was uncomfortable, it soaked her clothes and ran into her eyes, and it was the most beautiful thing she'd ever felt. "I accept your judgment, Sky Mother, but please, let me make one request. Let this town never forget what happened today. Let them remember that some blessings come disguised as discomfort, and let them never, ever open an umbrella again, not out of fear, but out of love, out of respect for what you freely give." Allah placed both hands on Adaeze's shoulders. "So it shall be. From this day forward, no umbrella shall be opened in Akpara. Those who do will face the same curse, the same choice, and your people will walk in my reign with joy, remembering you, remembering this moment, remembering what true gratitude means." The Sky Mother leaned close and whispered something in Adaeze's ear. Words meant only for her, and then she began to fade, dissolving back into the storm from which she came. Adaeze stood alone in the clearing as the full force of the storm unleashed. Lightning struck all around her, thunder shook the earth, rain fell so hard it hurt, and she danced. She danced like she danced as a child, when rain was nothing but an excuse to play. She spun and laughed and let the storm soak her to her soul. From his hiding place, Obi watched, tears mixing with rain on his face. He understood now. She wasn't going to come home, not the way he'd hoped, but she was teaching them all how to live. A bolt of lightning struck the tree of promises. The light was so bright Obi had to shield his eyes. When he could see again, Adaeze was gone. In Akpara, the rain came like a miracle. One moment the sky was blood red and dry. The next, gray clouds rolled in like a blessing too long delayed, and water poured from the heavens. People ran from their homes not to seek shelter, but to stand in it, to feel it on their skin, to remember what they'd taken for granted. Children who'd known nothing but drought stood with mouths open, tasting rain for the first time. Old people fell to their knees, weeping with relief. Farmers rushed to their fields, pressing their faces to the wet earth. Chief Ikenga stood in the center of the village, rain pouring over him, washing away 3 months of dust and despair. But it couldn't wash away his guilt. His daughter was gone. The price had been paid, and he would carry that weight until his dying day. Obi emerged from the forest 3 days later. He didn't speak of what he'd seen. He couldn't, not yet. The words were trapped in his throat like stones. But everyone knew. The way he walked, the emptiness in his eyes, the rain that fell on his face mixing with tears that wouldn't stop. Adaeze was gone. 1 week after the rain returned, Chief Ikenga called the entire town together. He stood before them, a man who'd aged 10 years in 10 days. When he spoke, his voice carried to every ear, but it was hollow, broken. "My people, my daughter gave her life so that we might live. She stood before the Sky Mother and accepted judgment for a sin I committed. And in her sacrifice, she taught us a lesson we must never forget. From this day forward, no person in Akpara shall ever open an umbrella. Not tomorrow, not in 100 years, not in 1,000 years. This law shall pass from parent to child, from generation to generation, until the sun itself burns out. We will work in the rain. We will celebrate in the rain. Every drop that touches our skin will remind us of Adaeze. Every storm will be a testament to her sacrifice. Every time we feel uncomfortable in the downpour, we will remember that discomfort is a small price for life itself. The town priest stepped forward, carrying a stone tablet. On it, the new law was carved in the old script, letters that would outlast empires. Whoever opens an umbrella in Akpara shall bring the curse upon us all. The sky will turn red, the rain will cease, and only another willing sacrifice can restore what was broken. Chief Ikenga approached the stone and pressed his hand against it, leaving his palm print in red clay. This is my oath, sealed in my hand, witnessed by the Sky Mother herself. One by one, every person in Akpara came forward, young and old, wealthy and poor, strong and weak. Each pressed their hand to the stone, leaving their mark, sealing the covenant. Obi came last. His hand trembled as he approached. When he pressed it to the stone, he whispered words only he could hear. I remember, my love. I'll make sure they all remember. Years became decades. Decades became centuries. The stone monument stood in the center of Akpara, weathered by time but never forgotten. Chief Ikenga lived another 20 years, but he never smiled again. Every raindrop that touched his face was a reminder of the daughter he'd lost to his pride. Obi never married. He became the town's griot, the keeper of stories. Every evening for 40 years, he would sit under that stone monument and tell the tale of Adaeze to anyone who would listen. When he finally died, at the age of 98, they say he was smiling. His last words were, "I'm coming, my love. Wait for me." The story passed from his lips to new griots, from parents to children, from elders to youth. Each generation added their own flourishes, but the core remained the same. Never open an umbrella in Akpara. Never reject the blessings of heaven. Never forget what pride costs. For 200 years, the law held through colonial times, through independence, through modernization, through everything that tried to change Akpara. This one rule remained absolute until Chidi returned with his red umbrella.
Mama Neka's voice faded, and silence filled the room like water filling a well. The only sound was rain falling outside, steady and eternal. Chidi sat frozen, his mind reeling. The story he dismissed as superstition now felt heavy with truth. He looked at the umbrella lying on the floor, and for the first time, he truly saw it. Not as a convenient tool, but as a symbol of everything Adaeze had died to teach. "But, Mama," he said slowly, "that means if I had opened this umbrella, the curse would have returned." Emeka finished quietly. The sky would turn red, the rain would stop, and someone would have to die to bring it back. Amara, his young sister, looked at him with wide eyes. "Were you really going to open it, brother?" Chidi's stomach turned. He remembered that morning walking through town. He'd felt rain starting to fall. His hand had moved to the umbrella's handle. He'd been seconds away from pressing the button that would open it. Seconds away from dooming them all. "I didn't know," he whispered. "I didn't understand." Mama Nika stood and walked to the window, watching rain fall on people who walked through it without complaint. Young people laughing, dancing in puddles. Old people moving slowly but steadily, faces turned upward. Children playing games that involved getting as wet as possible. "This is who we are," she said softly. "We are the people who dance in rain. We are the children of Adaeze's sacrifice. And as long as we remember, as long as we honor the covenant, we live under the Sky Mother's blessing." She turned to face Chidi, and her eyes were both stern and loving.
You left Akpara as a boy and came back as a stranger. You brought city ways, city thinking. You forgot that comfort isn't always good, and discomfort isn't always bad. You forgot that some things are more important than staying dry. Chidi stood slowly, picking up the umbrella. It felt heavier now, weighted with the story he'd heard, with the life it had cost, with the future it could destroy. What should I do with it? The next morning, Chidi set out for the sacred grove. He would take the umbrella to the same place Adaeze had gone 200 years before. He would destroy it properly, with respect, with understanding. His family walked with him to the edge of town. So did many others. Word had spread of the close call, of the umbrella that almost brought destruction. Mama Neka pressed a cloth bundle into his hands. Food for the journey and something else. She leaned close. When you reach the tree of promises, say a prayer for Adaeze. Tell her we remember. Tell her we're grateful. Chidi nodded, unable to speak past the lump in his throat. The walk took all day, just as it had for Adaeze, but this time no curse darkened the sky. Rain fell normally, naturally, blessing the journey. He let the rain soak him. He felt it run down his face, his neck, his back. And for the first time since returning home, he felt present, alive, connected to something bigger than himself. By the time he reached the sacred grove, he was drenched, muddy, and completely transformed. The tree of promises stood exactly as it had in Mama Neka's story, ancient beyond measure, its branches reaching toward a sky that today was gray and generous with rain. Chidi approached with reverence, carrying the umbrella like the burden it was. He knelt in the mud and spoke words he'd never thought he'd say. Adaeze, daughter of Akpara, I'm sorry. I'm sorry I forgot. I'm sorry I almost undid everything you died for. I'm sorry I thought I was above the ways of my people. He raised the umbrella high and brought it down against the tree with all his strength. Once, twice, 3 times. On the third strike, it shattered. Not into dust, as Adaeze's umbrella had, but into broken pieces that would never shield anyone from anything. And in that moment, Chidi felt something break inside him too. The arrogance, the pride, the belief that modern ways were always better. It all shattered with the umbrella, leaving him raw and open, and finally, ready to learn. Rain fell harder, and Chidi stood, spreading his arms wide. He tilted his face to the sky and let the water pour over him. It was cold, it was uncomfortable, and it was perfect. One evening, as storm clouds gathered, a young boy approached him. The kid couldn't have been more than 7, with curious eyes and questions on his lips. "Uncle Chidi, why don't we use umbrellas like people in the city?" Chidi knelt down so he was eye level with the child. Rain began to fall around them, and neither moved to seek shelter. "Because, little one, we are blessed. When rain falls on us, it's the Sky Mother herself touching our skin. It's life itself, saying, 'You are part of me, and I am part of you.' To block that would be to say we don't want her blessing. But doesn't it feel bad, being wet all the time?" Chidi smiled, the kind of smile that reaches the eyes and warms the soul. Sometimes the best blessings feel uncomfortable at first, but that's how we know they're real. That's how we remember to be grateful. The boy thought about this, rain soaking his hair and running down his face. Then suddenly he grinned and ran off to jump in puddles. Chidi watched him go and heard a voice beside him. "You've learned well, grandson," Mama Neka said, appearing beside him like she always did, silent as wisdom itself. "I almost destroyed everything," Chidi said quietly. "I almost forgot who I am." "But you didn't, And now you remember. That's what matters. This was Akpara. This was the town where umbrellas were forbidden. Not because of superstition, not because of blind tradition, but because they remembered. They remembered Adaeze, who loved her people more than her own life. They remembered the covenant sealed in sacrifice. And they remembered that some comforts aren't worth the cost. They remembered that walking through rain together as one community was better than staying dry alone. And they remembered that the greatest blessings often come disguised as inconveniences. Thank you for watching this tale. If this story moved you, if it taught you something, if it reminded you to be grateful for the blessings that sometimes feel like burdens, then share it with someone who needs to hear this. What traditions does your culture have that teach gratitude? What stories do your elders tell? Share them in the comments below. Let's keep these ancient wisdoms alive together. And remember, sometimes the old ways hold truths that the modern world has forgotten. Subscribe for more interesting stories. Like this video if you learned something. Comment where you're watching from. Share with someone who needs to hear this message. Some blessings come disguised as rain.